Welcome to the Heartland Crime Stoppers Show. I'm your host, Chip Brown. Crime Stoppers is a 901c3 organization that helps law enforcement solve crimes through anonymous tips and monetary rewards. Crime Stoppers is funded primarily through the state of Florida Office of the Attorney General, Crime Stoppers Trust Fund, and through donations from the community. We cover Highlands, Hardy, and Polk County, and today we're down in Hardy County, and we're in the city of Wauchula talking to Police Chief John Eason. Chief Eason, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me, Chip.
Now, we always like to kind of learn a little bit about you, and you had an interesting story growing up, kind of always had an interest in law enforcement, and it was a long journey to get here. So tell us a little bit about growing up.
It has been a long journey, but it's been very fun and interesting. My interest in law enforcement actually began at about the age of 14 when I was a police explorer with the Avon Park Police Department's program. From that, I ended up joining the Air Force after high school, went to Fort Wainwright, Alaska, and while at Fort Wainwright, Alaska, I worked in the volunteering policing unit with the Fairbanks Police Department. So from there, I then moved back to Florida, went into the Florida Department of Corrections, where I became certified as a correctional officer, and spent about 5.5 years there, and then ultimately crossed over as a sworn law enforcement officer and got hired here at Wauchula in October 2002 as a part-time officer. So since then, I've went from part-time to full-time. I was a patrol sergeant covering the road and was promoted to chief of police in February of 2013.
Yeah, that is a long journey, and I know that you had said that back when you were in the high school days when you were doing the Explorer program. You were also working at one of the local hamburger places, flipping burgers. So
I was. My very first official job was flipping burgers at Hardee's in Avon Park.
yeah, I know that I was bagging groceries at Publix myself. So and those experiences are so valuable to learn to talk to people because that's basically what a job is in law enforcement, is knowing how to talk to people and deal with people.
Absolutely. Learning how to communicate one-on-one and even to groups and be able to get your thoughts and opinions across is paramount within this career field. A lot of times you're going to encounter people that may not see or believe the same things you do, and you may not see eye to eye. But a lot of times just from that communication, you can come to an understanding or a realization of what each other's opinions are, and sometimes you just have to agree to disagree and move on from there.
Yeah, I know that it's just so important, that you don't have to bend, you just have to be fair.
Correct.
It's so important on that. Now, tell us about the Wauchula Police Department. How large of a staff here, and what kind of square mileage area do you cover?
So the Wauchula Police Department has 14 full-time officers currently. We have one currently going through the academy. So when we're at full staff, full-time, we have 15 full-time officers. Then we have 4 part-time officers. Then we also have a victims advocate who does victims advocacy for the entire county. So all total, including our crossing guards, SROs, and all staff, we have a staff of 26. City of Wauchula has just over 5,000 people within its population and covers just over 3 square miles.
I've noticed a number of improvements and changes that you've been able to help push forward here, and I know you're going through a reaccreditation. You're looking for your third reaccreditation. Is that correct?
What we're going through is Wauchula Police Department has been accredited since June of 1999. So we are currently going through the accreditation process, building our proofs, getting our files together and compiled. So going through that process this year, we will actually be awarded our 3rd Excelsior Status Award. The Excelsior Status Award is the highest award that the Commission for Law Enforcement Accreditation in Florida gives, and we're going for our 3rd status of that this year.
Yeah, that would be quite an honor to get your 3rd in a row, because that is people don't really understand the importance of that and exactly how hard it is to get that and to maintain it.
It is difficult to get. It just becomes ingrained as part of the culture, though. Once you get your staff involved and they buy into it, then it just becomes a normal part of your normal day-to-day operations. They do it without thinking about it. So some of the requirements that you have to do for accreditation is making sure that you're providing victims' rights pamphlets to all the victims, making sure that something as simple as handcuffs are being double locked, making sure staff are trained on high liability issues and policies. But you become so ingrained to it, it just becomes part of your culture, and it becomes second nature to all the staff.
And this is not, they don't make special exemptions if you have under so many staff, or if you're over a certain staff. The core is all the same for all accredited law enforcement agencies. So whether you're in a somewhat smaller agency like you are with 15 personnel, 15 sworn people, or you have an agency that has 2,000 personnel, the playing field is level.
Absolutely. All these standards, the mandatory standards that you have to meet are the same across the board, and the non-mandatory standards are across the board for every law enforcement agency. So the same standards that Miami-Dade has to meet, or Orlando PD or Tampa PD, are the same standards that I have to meet, irregardless of agency size.
Yeah, and that's so important for the citizens, Hardy County and for Wauchula to understand that you meet the same standards as what may they envision, as a elite or a large department. You're meeting the same standards, doing the same level of service, and that speaks volumes for what you've been able to do.
It's been a long road, but we enjoy the ability to say that we're accredited, and I would put my staff against any other staff across the state because we know what we're doing from an accreditation standpoint. We're doing what's right for the community.
Now I know that you have a number of programs that you do here at Wauchula PD. I think you have a handgun safety course that you offer as a self-defense. Tell us about some of those programs and how the community is responding to those.
So one of the programs that we actually provide is a active shooter awareness response training. I got certified, and a couple other officers got certified as active shooter response trainers several years ago. So we provide that to the community free of cost. The last time we counted, we had probably done in excess of 500 students through that class from every different organizations, from banks to hospitals to medical facilities. If you want a class, we'll put it on.
Yeah. Now, do they have to live inside the city limits to participate in that, or do you open it up to the county?
We open it up to the county. In fact, one class I went to, the company that wanted the class had a branch in Inglewood. And I actually traveled to Inglewood over 2 different weekends to make sure all their staff in Inglewood had that training.
Now, what is involved in that class? What are you actually teaching during these classes?
So what we teach is based on the Homeland Security response of run, hide, fight. So I give some background on some of the major active shooter cases that happened on a nationwide status. We talk about those, talk about suspects, talk about things to look for. What would you do if you find yourself in an active shooter situation? What you would need to look at for how do you get out. If you can't get out and you have to hide, things that you can do and look at to try to barricade yourself and protect yourself inside the building. Those are the things that we kind of look at. We don't have any kind of live fire. Weapons aren't allowed inside the class. It is literally a classroom setting where it's a discussion of what to do if you ever found yourself in that kind of situation.
Yeah, that's one of those things that you hope you never find yourself in the middle of. But when you're in the middle of it, then it's not the time to think of a plan that you need to do.
Correct. If you're thinking of a plan in the middle of the situation, you're already behind the power curve. And a lot of our discussions in that class is we talk about their specific environment. So where would you go? What would you do? How would you escape? One of the classes we taught, they had a conference room that as soon as you came in the building, you immediately encountered a large glassy enclosed conference room. You had nowhere to hide. So, and you couldn't run if the shooter was coming directly into that conference room. So something as little as thinking about, okay, how do I get out of this room, was thinking out of the box and go, okay, well, let me go buy a brick from a local home supplier, set it on top of a credenza. That way, if I've got to break my way out of this room, I've got a brick to break the glass so I can climb out onto the roadway that was immediately adjacent to that conference room.
And that's something most people wouldn't think of ahead of time. They would just kind of panic. And so it's amazing the things that you can teach people.
Absolutely. It's just thinking outside the box and being aware of your situation. I mean, look at your surroundings and what's going on and think about what's happening and how would you get out if you needed to.
Yeah. Now, I know you also teach a safety class also for women's safety class.
Correct. We have a women's self-defense class. I've got a couple of instructors, myself included, that's certified through the National Self-Defense Institute, and we do a women's self-defense class specifically for women. Only women can attend. Husbands, boyfriends, they cannot attend. There's not any men allowed in the class. So what we're teaching them is tips and techniques they can do to counter an attack by a suspect or boyfriend, husband, that kind of thing, should they find themselves in a domestic violence situation.
Yeah, women always think, and even men as well, that it's never going to happen to them. And it's just, you don't have to be really violent, but there are some techniques and some procedures, I'm sure, that are most helpful. I'm sure you're teaching some strikes and a few things like that. And
we teach strikes. We also teach ways to escape from certain holds if necessary. So, and that's why we don't let men in the class, because the last thing we want to do is have a woman in the class who's learning this with their husband, and they find themselves a victim of domestic violence, and the husband now knows how to counter the techniques that we're teaching.
Yeah, it's there again. Domestic violence. I know during the COVID-19, there's you hear reports of that has increased along with child abuse. Now, I understand that you really haven't seen much of that increase here in Wauchula.
We haven't since COVID started back in March, and we started tracking those domestic violence numbers specifically so we could make sure we were reaching out to victims and providing services in the event something happened. And as of today, our numbers have not increased from a domestic violence standpoint.
Well, that's very good. I know you're awfully proud of those numbers as well, and it's again, I think it just talks about, I think, the involvement that you have in the community. So we certainly thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Chief, I'm going to ask you to stick around for a few minutes as we look at some of our most unsolved cases.
Absolutely.
Heartland Crime Stoppers will wait for you to anonymously report unsolved crimes or ongoing criminal activity while remaining anonymous. And if your tip results in an arrest, eligible for a cash reward of up to $3,000. Here's a look at some of our most recent unsolved cases.
The Highlands County Sheriff's Office is seeking 35-year-old Innocent Said Destino Jr. for charges of aggravated child abuse and kidnapping. He is considered armed and dangerous. Philip Lewis Smith, also known as Justin Smith, has a local warrant for unlawful sexual activity with certain minors, 2 counts. Do you recognize this young man? He's accused of committing retail theft on Tuesday, June 30th at the Dollar General store that's located at 1085 Pipkin Road in Lakeland. A missing person report has been made. His name is Keith Schmelzer. He's 6'1", 165 pounds. His family's very worried about him. Now, if you've seen him, please reach out to his family. Their number is 863-214-0768.
If you have any information on any of the cases you've just seen, or any information on an unsolved crime, please contact Heartland Crime Stoppers and leave an anonymous tip. The toll-free tip line is 1-800-226-TIPS. That's 8477. You can also leave an anonymous web tip by going to www.heartlandcrimestoppers.com and click on the Give a Tip tab, or by going to www.p3tips.com. Don't forget, you can download our free P3 Tips app on your smart device. Whichever way you choose to leave a tip, you will remain 100% anonymous. If your tip results in an arrest, the recovery of stolen property, or the recovery of illegal drugs, you could be eligible for a cash reward of up to $3,000.
Welcome back to the Heartland Crime Stoppers show. I'm your host, Chip Brown. We're going to talk some more with Chief John Eason at the Wauchula Police Department as we make our swing through Hardy County. Chief Eason, thank you for sticking around.
Thank you.
Now, there's a number of things I know that you're doing here with Wauchula Police Department, and you have right now a real big push for obvious reasons for what you call the 9 o'clock routine. Tell us more about that.
Okay, so the 9 o'clock routine is where we actually put a post up through our social media and Facebook every night at 9 o'clock, just to remind the community do what they can to prevent themselves from becoming a victim. Make sure their car doors are locked. Make sure their alarms are set on the house. Make sure their house is locked. Going back through some of our stats over the last 2 years for our stolen vehicles, we actually discovered 93% of our stolen vehicles were because somebody had left the vehicle unlocked and the keys in the vehicle.
93% because the vehicle's unlocked and the keys were in it.
Correct, 93%. So out of that 93% with the vehicle unlocked and the keys left in the car, it was either those contributing factors or somebody that they knew that had been staying at their house, a friend, family member, something of that nature, who had the keys, saw the keys laying on the counter and decided they wanted to take the car for a joyride in the middle of the night. So 93% of all vehicle burglaries, vehicle thefts over the last 2 years can be directly attributed to not locking the vehicle. That's a phenomenal number that could have been prevented by doing something as simple as hitting your car alarm, locking your doors, not leaving your keys under the seat.
Yeah, it's kind of, I would equate it to kind of like when you're growing up and your mother telling you, have you brushed your teeth and washed your face yet? So
we all needed reminders as a kid growing up to go brush your teeth. Some of us as kids needed several reminders every night. And that's what we're trying to do with 9 o'clock routine, is just make it to a point that at a designated time every night, there's something that reminds you in the back of your head that goes, oh, wait a minute, I need to go lock my car. Because a lot of times somebody will coming in from work, we're busy, we're not paying attention, it's quick to get dinner started, we've got to go get the kids' homework checked, we get sidetracked, we meant to go back outside of the car to get something, and then we come back out the next morning and find our car's been burglarized. So it's as easy as just taking 30 seconds at 9 o'clock, making sure all your doors are locked, make sure your windows are locked, make sure your car's locked, and then you won't find yourself as a victim.
It's just those little things, and like you say, life gets so busy, especially with technology and things that are going on. And with homeschooling, and people are frazzled, and they get tired, and you wake up in the middle of the night thinking, well, did I lock the car? Did I lock the back door? And so I think that's a very good program.
We're hoping it's going to show and pay dividends on showing that reduction of vehicle burglaries and vehicle thefts being reduced just by going out and making sure you're locking your stuff.
Now, tell us about the actual the burglaries and thefts from homes. I know you had some stats on those as well.
So we went back and looked over about the last 18 months for residential burglaries, commercial burglaries, that kind of stuff. And about 53% of those were directly related, again, to a window being unlocked or a door being unlocked. So again, it doesn't just have to be your car. It's make sure your property's locked. The days of going to bed, leaving your house unlocked like it was years ago, those days unfortunately are gone. Every time we have people out walking around in the middle of the night, we stop, we get out with them, we talk to them, find out who they are, where they're going, what they're doing. But a lot of times it's just crimes of opportunity. They're walking by doing what we call car fishing and checking every single door of a car or a house in a neighborhood. And if they find it open, guaranteed they're going to go in. So we had a case that we actually submitted to Crime Stoppers where we had a burglary of a business. Now they actually broke into this one, but they were able to get in. We were able to actually get good video of it, send it to you with Crime Stoppers. It got posted to our Facebook page, and within 45 minutes, we had a suspect name, and we're going out to make contact with that suspect to make an arrest.
And it's just amazing how people, when they have that opportunity, that they really want to be involved, they really want to help. Some do it, for the reward. Some do it because they know that it's a crime and it's just not right to do. But it's so easy for people to either to call Crime Stoppers, or go to the website, or even use their phone to text in, using the app just to leave an anonymous tip, and it's amazing.
It makes it real easy, especially when you're using the Crime Stopper app. But it also comes down to, as well, is having that community involvement, being involved with your community, letting them know that the officers are approachable. I can't tell you how many times my phone goes off during a day if somebody just wants to talk, somebody's got a tip, somebody's got information. But giving them that avenue, giving them that ability to be involved, even with see something, say something. We tell people all the time when we're talking to them, they're like, well, I really didn't know if I should call. call. That's what we're here for. Let us come out, let us do the investigation, let us make a determination whether a crime has been committed or not. We would much rather you call and it be absolutely nothing than us not get the call and somebody becomes a victim the next morning.
I know I equate it to not being a nosy neighbor, but just being aware of your circumstances, whether it's through, at your job site, where you're trying to stay safety, from an active shooter situation, being aware that these things could happen. Be aware of your surroundings when you walk out, in the parking lot to get your car. Like have your keys out. Think ahead. Just don't get there and start fumbling. Don't make yourself an opportunity to have a crime to be a victim.
Absolutely, because and a lot of those crimes are the crimes of opportunity. It's funny you mentioned the keys, because that's one of the things that we teach in the women's self-defense class is if you're leaving a store, you're carrying all these groceries, you're carrying bags, whatever, make sure you've got your keys in your hand. Make sure that as soon as you get to your car, you're able to get the car open, get inside, and get back into that secure car. You don't want to be standing out fumbling around with keys. The other thing you mentioned is nosy neighbors. I remember as a kid being out on the street till the time the street lights came on. Your mom was out, your dad was out, you knew your neighbors. Today, we don't know our neighbors because we come home, we're on social media, we're on our phone, we're dealing with our hectic life. So it's not about necessarily being a nosy neighbor, but just, again, being aware of your surroundings, know what's going on, know what's normal in your neighborhood and what's not. And we'd much rather get that call and realize it's absolutely nothing than somebody out car fishing.
Yeah, because your neighbor, you're going to know in your neighborhood, who belongs there generally, or if something is amiss, hey, that light is not normally on, or that house, there's people on vacation now, there's a light on that wasn't there earlier. And again, just being aware of the situation, and they can call you, they can call the sheriff, they can call Crime Stoppers. Just like you said, if you see something, just say something. And,
absolutely.
And then y'all can check it out. And determine whether it's something that is illegal or a crime or not.
Right, absolutely.
Now, I know that you had talked earlier about your victim advocacy program, and perhaps a lot of people don't really understand what that involves or what the purpose of that program is. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So our victims advocacy program, we actually have the victims advocate for the entire county. Our victims advocate is partially funded through a grant out of the Office of the Attorney General. So our victims advocate is designed to help that victim navigate through the criminal justice process from the moment they become a victim until their crime or their case is resolved, whether it's conviction or whatever happens, and even sometimes beyond from that. So over the course of the last year, our victims advocate has had contact with over 303 individual victims, not necessarily all from the city of Wauchula. It's victims from the entire county. Mm-hmm. And it may be victims from crimes that occurred from 3 years ago that they're still going through the process. So, but she had contact with 303 different crime victims over the course of the last year. During that process, she helps process paperwork. If they need to help finding alternate housing, if they need to have help filing for injunctions for protection, that's what she's there for. She's literally the person anybody can come to if they find themselves a victim, and they can be navigated through the criminal justice process from start to finish.
Yeah, that process, if you've never been involved in the criminal justice system, you don't know what really is going on. You think it's like TV, you make an arrest and then, you go to trial, and they don't understand the complexities and the rights, because a person is presumed innocent until they are convicted. They may have been arrested. But there's lawyers, there's continuances, there's motions to suppress, and it's just a long process. And unless you are involved in that system, you would be lost. And you need someone like your victim advocate to walk you through that and to help explain, what's coming up next.
Absolutely, especially when you start talking about motion to suppress hearings or continuances. The victim doesn't understand a lot of times because, again, like you said, they're not familiar with the process, that this can be a very long process, especially depending on the severity of the crime. So having that person to call and talk to and say, I don't understand what I just got. I don't understand this letter I got from the state attorney's office, or why am I having to go to court again? Unfortunately, it's not like it is in TV, and we don't solve and get convictions in 50 minutes, minus commercials. So it is a process that we have to go through, but that's what the victim's advocate is there for, is to help them navigate that system. So hopefully they don't find themselves as a victim again.
Well, thank you so much, Chief, for taking time today to let us come into your office and to chat with you. And thank you for all you've done for the city of Wauchula and for your service to our country. And just thank you so very much.
Chip, it was my pleasure. Thank you for coming.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Heartland Crime Stoppers Show. If you have any information on any unsolved crime or ongoing criminal activity and would like to remain anonymous, please call Heartland Crime Stoppers at 1-800-226-TIPS. That's 1-800-226-TIPS. You can also use our mobile app, or you can also use our website, www.heartlandcrimestoppers.com. Until next time, just remember that it's a crime, and you can help make sure that they don't get away with it.